This all started with a cup of water. Every morning I wake up, climb out of bed, march downstairs, and fill a tall glass with tap water and drink it. But this time, the water went down the wrong way. I started coughing, sputtering, almost choking. I set the glass down on the countertop, turned away, and thumped my chest until I stopped coughing. When I turned back, the cup of water was gone. I froze, motionless. Only my eyes moved, darting back and forth around the kitchen. There was a shift in the air, a subtle drift, as though something was moving through the room with incredible speed. I stepped back from the countertop, and my heel bumped into something. I span around, and my heel bumped into a glass of water. It tumbled over, with a dull and clattering thud. I picked it up and studied it, turning it over in my hand like it was some strange alien artifact. What just happened? I called my sister to tell her what happened, and she laughed. There must have been a reasonable explanation, she said. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for it. Maybe I dropped the glass in my coughing fit, and it somehow landed upright. Crazier things have happened. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. Little things became all too common. Each event was slightly less unexplainable than the last. But still, I shrugged it off, trying to think of reasonable explanations. But then it happened. I snapped awake. It was 2:58 a.m. on a Tuesday, bright light blinding into my dilated eyes. Somehow, the lights were on. A power surge, maybe. I thought. I climbed out of bed, marched across the room, and froze. I froze because my bedroom door was open. But this didn't bother me too much. What bothered me was the glass of half-empty water sitting on the floor in the middle of the upstairs hallway. That bothered me for several reasons, most of which being I didn't put it there. I crept out into the hallway. I got down and lifted the glass of water. There were fingerprints. Fingerprints fogged on the glass. Dozens and dozens of them. I literally dropped the glass as I saw them. It thumped onto the carpet and spilled over, an expanding puddle of water absorbing into the carpet. I glanced over my back shoulder. This looming sense of unease climbed through my body. I pushed back to standing, and there was another glass of water, half empty, sitting on the top of the stairs. I walked forward, looked down the stairs, and there was another one, sitting halfway down the steps. It was a trail of half-empty cups. I was honestly just thinking about calling the police at this point. I reached for my phone instinctively, but it wasn't there. I always kept my phone in my pocket, even when I slept. But now it was gone. Somebody was hiding in my house. I was sure of it. I looked back over my shoulder, down the hallway, towards my bedroom. I questioned if it fell out of my pocket, or maybe I left it in my bed. I was about to go look, when downstairs, something buzzed against the hardwood floor. That distinct pattern I made for notifications rang out. Somehow, my phone was downstairs. I turned back, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. My phone was on the kitchen floor, buzzing around in circles. I stepped over, picked it up, and flicked on the screen. I'd had enough, and was going to call the police. But I froze. My eyes caught a push notification at the top of the screen. New photos saved to iCloud, it read. I raised an eyebrow, tapped into it, and my heart dropped. It was a photo of me asleep. It said it was taken at 2:57 a.m., 1 minute before I woke up. A sickening feeling of dread spiraled through me as everything piled up. The cups of water, the lights turning on, the phone being downstairs, and now finally a photo of me, a photo which somebody else had taken as I slept. I dialed 911. 911, where are you located? The voice answered. I responded with my address. What's your emergency? He replied. There's somebody in my house. Are you in a room? Please get to a safe room and lock the door. I bolted to the nearest bathroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Okay, sir, are you safe? But before I could answer, a door slammed shut somewhere upstairs. He's upstairs, I said. Help is on the way. Just focus on your breathing. Upstairs, Another door swung open and slammed shut. The intruder was searching now, checking each and every room in order. "Sir, are you there?" "Yeah," I whispered. Slamming doors were getting closer. The final door upstairs slammed shut. And suddenly, a door downstairs swung open and slammed shut. Were there multiple intruders? Either there were, or this person was impossibly fast. Sir, are you still in the bathroom?" The bathroom. How did they know I was hiding in the bathroom? I never told them I was hiding in the bathroom. "Sir, are you there?" the voice said again, but this time I could hear it on the other side of the door. I was hearing the 911 operator's voice inside my house. The intruder was somehow talking to me on my phone and was pretending to be a 911 operator. The bathroom doorknob rattled. "Sir, open the door," he said. Dropping my phone, I wrapped my grip around the handle, pulling back with all my strength. "Sir, please open the door." I didn't budge. "Sir, open the door." He kept repeating, like a broken record, like a pre-made recording, all the while pulling back at the doorknob trying to get in. The light started turning on and off, a rapid cycle between light and dark, faster and faster. "Sir, we can't help you if you don't open the door," he said, almost sounding on the verge of laughter now. Suddenly, outside, around the corner, the front door burst open. A voice yelled out, "Police." There was silence. I remained quiet. I didn't trust it. Whatever I was dealing with didn't seem to play by the rules of reality. I wasn't going to fall for it. I remained silent, hands gripped around the doorknob and remaining motionless. "Hello," the deep voice said. "I'm getting no response. Requesting backup." I hid in the bathroom for an hour until the actual police found me. I was a nervous wreck, understandably so, telling them about the woman on the phone, telling them about the cups of water on the floor. Unsurprisingly, they sent me in for a psych evaluation, and I was discharged a few days later. Of course, no one believed me, even when I showed them the photo of me sleeping. I moved out over the next month. No way I was sticking around after that. In hindsight, I should have moved out way earlier. I'm now living upstate, in a much smaller house, less places for would-be intruders to hide. I have cameras set up everywhere, so this time, if anyone messes with me, I'll have proof. It's all connected to my phone, too, so I can even check the cameras while I'm at work. I might be a coward, but I'm not stupid. So anyways, quite a few uneventful months had gone by since the incident. In fact, nothing else had even happened until tonight. I was even starting to wonder if maybe my sister was right. Maybe I had a momentary lapse in sanity. But now I was laying on my bed. I can't move. I'm paralyzed with fear, and writing this is the only thing that even remotely calms me down. Earlier, about an hour and 23 minutes ago to be exact, I got home from work and crawled right into bed. That was my first mistake. I broke my ritual. My ritual was to check all the cameras before entering the house, checking to see if any motion was recorded during the day. But I reasoned that I was tired, and it was late after work. I just wanted to sleep. I'll just check the cameras in bed, I thought. But of course, today of all days is the day something happened. 9 hours and 23 minutes ago, the bedroom camera recorded motion. I watched the footage on my phone just 20 minutes ago. It was footage of me mulling around the house, getting ready for work, and then leaving. At first, I breathed relief. Of course it was just me. I was a little late this morning. But then, 30 seconds after I had left, motion was detected from my bedroom camera. The footage appeared. My empty bedroom was on the screen. It was dark. I squinted. There was nothing. But then suddenly, in the footage, the lights flicked on. Though there was still nothing, they flicked on and off. And then I saw something that filled me with fear far beyond anything I'd ever felt. A fear far beyond anything I even knew was possible. When the lights flicked back on, a person appeared. A person standing in the middle of my room, with pinstripe posture, hands over their face, like someone playing peekaboo. The footage fast-forwarded on its own now, shadows drifting across the wall as the sign outside moved downward. But the person just stood there, motionless as the world sped by, hands covering their face, unmoving. The footage snapped back to real time, 30 seconds before I had arrived home. The person slightly perked up, hearing my arrival. Then, they dropped to their knees, hands still covering their face, and in one smooth, almost robotic motion, they fell to their side and rolled under the bed which I was currently laying on. My name is Ellen. Last spring, I divorced my husband of 16 years, Robert. I thought we were happy together, but he'd been cheating on me for years. When I finally caught him in the act, I left and never looked back. I got my own condo near my work and tried to restart my life. Robert and I had never had any kids of our own. That was Robert's idea, of course. And now I'm too old to have a family. Honestly, this year has been the worst of my life. Everything I thought I knew about my husband was wrong, and I really didn't want to see any of my friends. They all sided with me in the divorce, of course, but I couldn't stand their sympathetic looks. They all pitied me, and I didn't want to deal with that right now. So I decided to do my best to make a new friend group. Right away, I met my new neighbor, Laney, and I knew that she'd make a good friend. She was friendly and funny. She came over and introduced herself, and she didn't ask me any embarrassing questions, like why I was all alone at this stage of my life. On that first meeting, we drank coffee and talked for hours. I got a really good feeling about her. It was only after Laney left that I noticed something odd. I went into my bathroom, which Laney had used during her visit, and I noticed that my medicine drawer was wide open. She must have rifled around in there. She must have seen all the anti-anxiety medication I was on. This was a clear invasion of privacy, but I forced myself to forget about it. After all, I really needed a friend. 2 days later, Laney showed up at my door with a casserole. I let her in, and we had a pretty nice chat. At first. Over time, though, she started asking me strange questions. She asked if I'd had any visions since I'd moved in, if any objects had been moved, if I'd heard any voices telling me to do something. I honestly didn't know how to answer. She must have thought I was insane from all the medication I was on. Laney saw how uncomfortable I felt because she said, "It's nothing personal, Ellen. This condo's just, well, the people who move in here tend to have some strange experiences. I just want you to be prepared." "What are you saying?" I asked. "That my condo's haunted?" "Maybe," she said. She looked deadly serious. A few years back, a married couple moved in. They seemed happy at first, but the husband had a wandering eye, and when the wife found out, she bought a gun. And Laney's voice trailed off. "Someone got murdered here?" I asked. She nodded gravely. "And ever since then, residents don't stay here long. But you're the first single person to rent this place, so maybe you're different. Maybe you won't notice anything at all." She left pretty soon after that, acting like nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing Robert walking into the house, and then me shooting him dead. It was horrifying. I hated Robert more than anyone in the world, but I didn't want to see him get murdered. Eventually, I fell asleep, but around 3 in the morning, I jerked awake. Someone was downstairs. I could hear footsteps. Ignoring my fear, I went downstairs and turned on all the lights. No one was there, but I noticed that both my front and back door were wide open, and there were bits of paper scattered all around the floor. When I got closer, I realized that they weren't papers. They were cut-up wedding photos. Someone had snuck in and found my wedding album in one of my still-packed boxes. They'd cut out every photo of Robert, using a Sharpie to scratch out his face and draw X's over his eyes. Who did this? Was it Laney, just trying to mess with me? Was it Robert, who somehow tracked down my new address? Or was it something else? I closed and locked both doors, and then picked up all the photos. I dumped them all into a drawer. I figured that if someone was messing with me, I'd need to have the evidence. When everything was cleaned up, and I was sure that no one else was in the condo, I headed back upstairs. That's when I heard the voice. It sounded like Robert's, only deeper. It said, "Kill him, Ellen. Kill him." I couldn't tell where the voice was coming from. It sounded like it was coming from every direction, from the walls themselves. "Shut up!" I screamed and ran into my bedroom. I got back under the covers and tried to go back to sleep, but I kept hearing that voice. "Kill him, Ellen." The next day, I went next door to visit Laney. I needed answers. She looked like she was expecting me. She invited me inside, and we sat at her coffee table. "You're scared," she said. "Did something happen?" For some reason, she put her purse in the middle of the table. I didn't know why. "Yeah," I answered. "It was like you said. Last night, I heard voices. Terrible voices. And what did they tell you to do?" She looked down at her purse, and then back at me. "They told me to kill," I said. "And was there anything else?" he asked. "Did you see anything?" Laney had a very strange expression on her face. She was almost smiling. "There were torn-up photos of my ex-husband on the floor," I said. "They were defaced." "Interesting," Laney said. She fiddled with a strap on her purse. "Now, do you remember tearing up those photos?" "No," I said. "It wasn't me." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Perhaps you weren't aware of what you were doing. Are you saying I'm crazy?" "All I'm saying is that you found Robert's torn-up photos and a voice was telling you to kill him. Maybe you've just been pushed too far. Maybe you need help." I jumped out of my chair. Everything was finally becoming clear. "How did you know his name was Robert?" I asked. "I never told you his name." Laney's expression instantly dropped. She grabbed her purse and stood up too. "Maybe you should leave." I was not going to leave. Not since I knew what Laney was up to. I grabbed the purse from her arms and opened it. Her cell phone was hidden inside, recording our entire conversation. "It's not what you think," Laney said. "You don't even know what I think," I screamed at her. "Let me tell you what I think. I think that you snuck into my house and cut up those photos yourself. I think you made up the whole story about my condo being haunted just to keep me on edge." "But the voices you've been hearing," she protested. "You switched my medications. On the first day you visited me, I saw that my medicine cabinet was open. You planted that stupid ghost story in my head. You talked about the other residents hearing voices, and you knew that the same thing would happen to me because of whatever crazy pills you put in my medicine cabinet. Is that right?" Laney slowly began to smile. "I guess you figured out everything, huh? But why?" I asked. "I don't even know you." "But I know you," she said. "Robert's told me everything about you. You're the reason he and I can't be together." I gasped. She was one of the women Robert had been sleeping with. But what did she want from me? "You took everything from him in the divorce," she explained. "His money is what's paying for your condo, right?" That wasn't right at all. "I barely got anything in the divorce." "Well, all I needed to do was show the world how insane you really are," she said. "And once you're locked up, Robert will be free of you forever. And he and I will finally start our new life. He loves me, you know. Now give me back my purse." "Okay," I said. "I'll give it back. But there are two things you need to know. For one thing, your phone is still recording. So I have your confession." She shrugged. She knew that she could just take her phone back from me and delete the parts that made her look bad. "And two," I said, "Robert doesn't love you. He slept with dozens of women during our marriage. I made him write down a list of names. And guess what? He didn't include yours. I guess he forgot about you." Laney instantly went wild. She lunged at me, ready to rip me apart. But I took her purse and struck her so hard on the side of the head that she flew backwards and landed right on top of her glass coffee table. It shattered under her. As she lay there, I called the police. When they arrived, I played them the whole recording. They instantly took Laney away. Coincidentally, Robert called me the next day to ask if I'd agreed to a delay in his divorce payments. I said sure. I had enough money for now. I told him about what Laney tried to do, and he just laughed. Yeah, he said, out of all my girlfriends, she was the crazy one. Bad the first time I saw a circus. I was 6 years old. I'd gone with my father to the fair, and it had been one of the best days of my life, because my father passed away a few days later. It was my fondest memory of our relationship too, because he had been so warm and affectionate with me at the circus, when I'd been overwhelmed by the awesome things that were on display. I could tell a few people at the fair were familiar with him, because when the show was over, he'd eagerly gone over to one of the performers, the magician, and they discussed with flourish. I could not easily forget the magician because he had a strange smile due to a gash on the lower part of his face. Sometimes I still get a twinge in my chest because I feel like I can perceive his scent from that day. My father was always particular about those things. He wore only cotton shirts and a particular type of pants. He had a very fancy gold Rolex watch he got from the fair, and it never left his wrist. But after his death, that watch went missing from his belongings. And now it was this watch that had me curious when the small miracle of a Craigslist offering appeared on my screen for a fancy gold watch that sunny Saturday. I assumed it was awfully similar to the watch which my dad owned, but I had nothing to reference the watch by, so I quickly sent a message to the seller. They replied in minutes, and I could tell he tried his best to make a salesman type of charm with me. I went with it with keen attention, drawn to this watch by a power which was beyond me. I chalked up to the fact that it reminded me so much of my father. The seller made his price known, and it was a steep call from what he had stated on the site. I asked why it was so, and he claimed to have only dropped the price to court interest. No one had ever wanted the watch up until I came along. I thought that was an interesting reason, even though I couldn't shake the awry feeling. Hey, I typed at him, I'd like to get the watch and I'll pay your sum. I noted his hesitation at first, because our exchange had been fluid up until that stage. I was anxious. Seconds passed with the heavy hand of an eternity as I watched the screen. The harder I stared at the watch, the clearer it became to me that it should belong to me. He told me that he could have it delivered to me personally if I did not mind, as it was surprising to him that someone would want such an old watch for that sum. I didn't mind and agreed. We talked about the time of his arrival. Hours passed since my conversation with the seller, and I was reminded by the blaring alarm which I had set for the moment of his arrival. I rushed from my workstation, a small part of my house, to the clock to turn it off when a light rapping noise echoed on my door. I paused in my track and heaved to clear my foggy mind from the lumbering progression of thought. "Who's there?" I asked as I walked gingerly towards the door. "Hey, delivery." The voice, clearly old and male, replied. "Shit." I cussed under my breath as I sauntered through the room to the door. I turned the key on the lock backwards and pulled it open. The door yawned open enough for me to stick my head through. A familiar rushing scent wound into my nostril, and I recoiled. The man's face changed from a beaming smile to a look of concern when he noted my reaction. "Are you okay?" he asked when I stared at him in confusion, unable to place the scent still. I nodded, gently assessing him guardedly. A clean strip of cold sweat pooled around my neck, and I struggled with the zipping and unzipping sensation of my chest. It had been years since I'd felt that, and I wondered if it was worth getting the watch back. "You wanted the watch?" the man asked with a stern expression. "Yes, please. How would you like to be paid? Cash or online?" I quizzed, dizzy from the rush of my mind. He paused and stared at me. "I'm not sure it's safe to collect such a sum of cash from you, and I'm not quite familiar with these new online payment systems." I stopped and wondered why he would come all that way just to deliver his wristwatch without knowing how he would like to be paid. My sense of concern was aroused. "How about I think of a way to take payment from you, and I'll be back in a few days," he said, and stared down at his pocket before he could fully flash a smile. He retrieved his hands from his pocket, and the watch came out with it. I was overcome with a cold sweat as he looked up, and that familiar smile from years ago registered in my head. I was stunned silent as I visually trailed the scar on the lower part of his face, which made his smiling awkward. I swallowed a harsh, nervous air, which was at the back of my throat. "How did you get this watch, sir?" I asked. "Pardon me," he queried back. He was no longer smiling. He had a wicked grimace which betrayed his ready inclination to harm me. I did not care. "My father once owned this watch," I clarified as I stood by the door, heart racing, as he turned around to reveal his eyes. First the pair of pupils were blue, and then they were red and then green as he blinked and walked towards me. My respiration intensified as the meaning of all of it dawned on me. I was standing before the man who had stabbed my father all those years ago, and he hypnotized me now. I felt my muscles slacken as he moved closer to me, and I started to wobble backwards from the door. With my strongest effort to break from his hypnosis, I moved back and slammed the door shut. I shook my head, and I was once again in control of myself. Seems as though I'd have to collect everything now, rather than later. He snickered viciously as he pried the door open with a forceful yank. I had no means of escape, so I did what I had to and leaped on him, dashing out a striking blow with my fist, which connected with his throat. He choked and gasped for air, pleading. "I assume someone's already paid you," I shouted. He struggled through, wheezing. "Damn, I should have known that I can't sell the same watch to a family twice." With those last words, he shut his eyes, and I stood there shaking with panic and wondering what had just happened.